200 Marines. One impossible night. Hell raining down in Vietnam. Only one man could save them all, and he did. But 50 years later, that same hero was found sobbing uncontrollably in a hospital supply closet, broken and invisible to the world he once protected. The nurse who discovered him had no idea she was looking at America's most forgotten champion. This story will break your heart and rebuild it. If you're ready to honor the heroes society forgot, like this video and subscribe, because Sergeant Mike Torres deserves to be remembered. Mike Torres had been invisible for 15 years. Every night at 11 p.m., he punched his time card at St. Mary's Virginia Hospital in Denver, Colorado. Every morning at 7 a.m., he punched out, having mopped floors and emptied trash throughout the building. The younger staff barely noticed him, just another aging janitor, probably a veteran like so many maintenance workers at VA hospitals. Mike preferred it that way. At 68, with silver hair and weathered hands, he'd found peace in the predictable rhythm of night shift work. No questions, no small talk, no expectations beyond showing up and doing the job quietly. The hospital was quiet at night, filled mostly with sleeping patients and skeleton crews of nurses handling emergencies. Perfect for a man who'd grown tired of being looked at, tired of answering questions he didn't want to face. Room 3C, storage, was officially designated for cleaning supplies and medical overflow. Unofficially, it had become Mike's sanctuary during breaks. Behind boxes of gauze and bottles of disinfectant, he created a small space away from fluorescent lights and the constant hum of hospital machinery. On a Tuesday night in November, nurse Sarah Martinez found him there. Sarah was 26, fresh from nursing school, working the night shift to pay off student loans while gaining experience in veteran care. She'd been looking for extra bedsheets when she heard the sound, quiet, muffled sobs coming from behind the supply shelves. She found Mike Torres sitting on an overturned bucket, his face in his hands, shoulders shaking with silent grief. Beside him lay a black and white photograph, its edges worn smooth from years of handling. Sarah knelt beside him and gently picked up the photograph. The image showed a group of young Marines in jungle combat gear, their faces streaked with camouflage paint and exhaustion. They were crowded together in what looked like a transport vehicle, some managing weak smiles despite the weariness in their eyes. In the center sat someone who looked remarkably like Mike Torres, only 50 years younger. Same eyes, same determined jawline. But this version wore sergeant stripes and carried himself with the unmistakable bearing of a seasoned combat leader. Sarah handed the picture back. Mike took it with trembling hands, eyes red with tears. She asked if he wanted to talk about the photo. After a long moment, Mike began telling her about February 23, 1968. The night Sergeant Mike Torres became a hero the world would forget. The firebase outside Da Nang housed 200 Marines monitoring enemy movement. Mike was a squad leader, 26 years old, responsible for 12 men. At 3 a.m., North Vietnamese regulars launched a coordinated assault. Mortars rained down, automatic weapons erupted from three sides. Within minutes, the firebase was surrounded, taking heavy casualties. The commanding officer died in the first wave. Mike found himself in command with no communication and no escape route. The enemy had superior numbers and position. Mike organized Marines into 3 groups and began fighting withdrawal toward a landing zone 2 miles through enemy jungle. He took point, coordinating movement under constant attack. For 6 hours, he moved between groups, directing fire, carrying wounded men, keeping Marines organized. At the landing zone, helicopters couldn't land safely with Marines clustered under enemy mortar range. Mike Torres drew enemy fire away by running directly toward enemy positions, alone, firing and shouting to get their attention. He zigzagged through jungle, taking fire from multiple directions while helicopters evacuated his men. When the last Marine was airlifted to safety, Mike was still running, still drawing fire. The crew expected to find his body. Instead, they found him in a bomb crater, wounded but alive, having spent 8 hours ensuring 200 Marines made it home. The Medal of Honor ceremony was 6 months later in Washington. President Johnson placed the medal around Mike's neck while photographers captured the moment. Mike was celebrated, interviewed, briefly the hero America needed during a difficult war. But heroes have short shelf lives. The news cycle moved on. Mike Torres faded from headlines and memory. After discharge, Mike struggled with readjustment. He worked construction, drove trucks, tried college. Nothing stuck. Nightmares were constant. Guilt was worse. Why had he survived when good men died? 20 years of odd jobs and failed relationships followed. Alcohol helped until it didn't. By the 1990s, Mike Torres was another homeless veteran, another casualty of a war that never really stopped for those who fought it. He found St. Mary's, Virginia hospital not as a patient, but seeking work that might give his life purpose. The hospital needed janitors. Mike needed reasons to get up. For 15 years, cleaning rooms where veterans received care felt like extended military duty. He was still taking care of Marines, just differently. Sarah listened without interruption. When he finished, she asked why he'd never told anyone. Mike explained his story was just another story in a building full of men carrying similar burdens. The truth was simpler. America celebrates heroes briefly, then expects them to quietly disappear into normal life. Sarah asked about the Medal of Honor. Mike explained he'd sold it years ago when homeless and desperate. A pawn shop gave him $200 for the highest military decoration. He'd used it for food and shelter. But late at night, Mike cried for that lost medal, not for its value, but because it was his last connection to when his life mattered most. Sarah made a decision that would change both their lives. After her shift ended that morning, she didn't go home to sleep. Instead, she went to her computer and started researching everything she could find about Sergeant Mike Torres. What she discovered amazed her. Mike's story was thoroughly documented in Marine Corps records, congressional testimonies, and newspaper archives from 1968. But she also found something else that broke her heart and gave her hope. Many of the Marines he'd saved had been searching for him for decades. Veterans organizations, Marine Corps reunion websites, and military forums contained dozens of posts from men desperately trying to find their old sergeant, wanting to thank him, wanting to include him in their lives and their family stories. The next night, Sarah showed Mike printouts. Forum posts from Marines searching for him. Messages from men crediting him with their survival, their family's existence. Mike stared with disbelief mixed with hope. Sarah asked if he'd let her help reconnect with these men. After silence, Mike asked if they'd still want to know him after seeing what he'd become. Sarah's answer was immediate. These men had searched for their sergeant for decades. They didn't care about his job or struggles. They cared about the man who'd carried them to safety when the world collapsed. 3 weeks later, Sarah organized a gathering. She'd contacted 5 Marines near Denver who'd been part of the 1968 evacuation. The hospital cafeteria meeting was electric. When Mike walked through the door, 5 70-year-old men stood like they were still 19, and he was still their sergeant. Recognition was immediate. These weren't young Marines anymore, but grandfathers with gray hair and canes. But seeing Mike Torres, they remembered the night that changed their lives and the man who'd ensured they lived to have families. The reunion made national news. The forgotten hero found mopping floors captured something America needed to hear about treating veterans. The hospital received offers of help. The Marine Corps offered to replace Mike's Medal of Honor. Former Marines nationwide sent letters sharing their own service stories. Mike Torres was no longer invisible. He still worked at the hospital, now in veteran counseling, helping former service members navigate military to civilian transition. He used his story to show other veterans their service mattered even when the world seemed to forget. The supply closet became a memorial. Sarah placed a plaque, in honor of all hidden heroes who serve in silence. Mike kept the old photograph on his desk, no longer hidden. When veterans asked about it, he'd tell the complete story, not just the Medal of Honor, but being lost and found, the journey from hero to forgotten man to healer of broken heroes. Mike Torres learned some heroes are celebrated immediately, some late. But the most important heroes keep serving even when they're not celebrated at all. Stories like Mike's remind us heroes walk among us daily. They've done extraordinary things and now do ordinary things, still serving quietly. The question isn't whether we have heroes, it's whether we're paying attention to them. Have you wondered about stories carried by people you pass daily? Share your thoughts below. If this moved you, please like, subscribe, and share with someone who believes heroes deserve to be seen, especially those who've learned to hide in plain sight. Because extraordinary people often choose ordinary lives, and that doesn't make them less extraordinary. Thank you for watching. We'll see you in the next story.